the Everything But Politics podcast.
Everything But Politics episode 128 is officially live. Now, you guys know we love our golf, so we have a fun one here today. One of the top voices in the world of golf journalism and the founder of Normal Sport, Kyle Porter. Kyle, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You can see I'm in entrepreneur mode back here with just stuff everywhere. But yeah, we'll enjoy talking some golf, talking some media and everything else I got going on.
Totally.
Some fun.
And we'll get into all that. And, entrepreneurship's a new venture for you, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I was at CBS Sports for 12 years before leaving in October at the beginning of October 2024. So yeah, it's only been 5 months. It's felt like 5 years in some ways. Just my friends are like, well, what's a win for this year? It's like, well, if we're still treading water at the end of the year, like that's a huge win. If we're still alive at the end of the year, that's a win. So it's been fun. It's been hard. It's been probably everything all the cliches I think are probably true for a reason. And but yeah, I've enjoyed it a ton.
Amazing.
How would you best explain to our listeners who don't know you, who is Kyle Porter?
Oh man, that's a great question. I actually got asked that the other day, and it just kind of like took me aback because it's you're in this world where you're trying not to talk about yourself a lot, and so then when somebody's like, well, "Who are you?" You're like, "Whoa!" Like I've never thought about that. Um, I mean, for people that are like listening to a podcast, I would say that I'm kind of an online presence in the golf space that writes and talks about golf in a way that hopefully makes people feel like it's a meaningful thing. Golf is so unique in that when you cover golf, like I have friends that cover professional basketball or professional football, their audience is not also playing basketball and football. Maybe basketball a little, but an aging audience is not really playing basketball and certainly not football. I'm not going out with my buddies and playing football on the weekends. If I am, I'm a psycho, right? Like that would be insane. And so you have this interesting relationship with your audience where it's like, man, golf is really personal and meaningful to a lot of people because they play it, but then they're also sort of relating to it at the professional level. So I kind of try to connect those two things as much as possible. And I've been doing that for a long time on the writing and podcasting side with CBS Sports since I guess the beginning of 2013.
At what age did you get involved in golf?
Well, my first job in golf was actually covering golf for CBS Sports in 2013, which is pretty weird and crazy. I grew up playing baseball, and my mom and grandfather were kind of what drove me into golf a little bit. My mom was a really good amateur player when she was growing up. Played in some U.S. women's AMs, played in some other like kind of USGA top level events. My grandfather was really into it. He wasn't as good, but he was one of the crazy guys that had he got master's badges back when you could actually like get on the list to get master's badges. It doesn't, I mean, they have the lottery now, right? But they don't have, you can't like get on, it's not like you can't get on it's like the Green Bay Packers. You can't get on the list to get the tickets anymore. He got on it back when it wasn't a huge thing. And so we kind of had that in my family growing up. Like I would sometimes go to the Masters with my dad or my parents or whatever. And so those were kind of the two people that got me into golf. But my first really like when I started falling in love with it was when I started working in it. And I'm very grateful. A lot of people that either cover sports or cover anything, whether they cover politics or whatever, uh, you're in it for a while and you get very jaded. You get very like crusty and you get tired of it. I still have the same, probably more joy now in 2025 than I did 12 years ago, 13 years ago when I first started. And so I have a lot of gratitude for that because that's not always the case. It doesn't always go that way. And that's been very life-giving for me along the way.
So you mentioned your first real golf position came, believe 2012 with CBS Sports. Prior to that, after graduating from Oklahoma State, you had a couple corporate jobs, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. What was corporate life like? And then how did you make the pivot to CBS Sports?
Well, corporate life, I got an MBA at Oklahoma State in 2008, I think it was 2009. Got a job in Stillwater, which is where Oklahoma State is, right after that, and then transitioned to Dallas in 2010. My wife and I moved down here. I got a job at a company doing insurance and retirement, and honestly, like the company was really good. I still have friends that work there, or I not from my time there, but like I know people in our community that work there now, and it's a great place. I remember Merrick looking at the person that's kind of me now, that was like 40 at the time or 45 or whatever, and thinking like, gosh, I don't like it. Just didn't look that fun. Like it looks successful. It looks like you're providing for your family. Like these were very super nice people that I enjoyed getting along with, but it just didn't seem like a career arc that I necessarily wanted. And so my wife, we were 25 at the time, 26, something like that, and she said, "Well, just start something." Like we didn't have kids. She's like, "Just go do something, anything, whatever." Which I give her a lot of credit for. She didn't have to do that. And so I started a website covering Oklahoma State sports, which was it wasn't random. I knew about it, but I had never been in journalism. I didn't know what anything. I didn't know like what on the record and off the record was, which is a very basic thing, and I didn't know it. And so there was. I was very fresh in that sense, and I ran that Oklahoma State website for almost 2 years. My wife said, "Let's give it 2 years, see what happens." In the 23rd month, I got my interview with CBS Sports, and honestly, like I would have taken a job covering NFL, NBA. Well, it didn't. They could have offered me like, you know, Spanish soccer, which I knew absolutely nothing about, and I would have been like, "Sure, let's do it." I know a ton about it. I probably wouldn't have said that, uh, but thankfully it was golf because I really have fallen in love with it, and I am very grateful. It felt very providential. I just kind of knew some of the right people and had the right interview with the right editor at the right time, and it worked out. But I ran that Oklahoma State side on the side for another, I guess, 7 years after that before I sold it in 2020. So I kind of did both of those concurrently as we started having kids to kind of make ends meet with especially early on, like with having a bunch of kids and everything. So that was kind of my journey into like what I would say is more formal or traditional media and journalism.
Very cool. And so we've been fortunate to talk to people in your world. It's such a competitive industry, right?
Mm.
When you first began in 2012, what was your role? How did you kind of, build a name for yourself in this golf world?
That's a great question. I thinking back on it, I thought I knew a lot and I didn't know anything at all, which is a dangerous combo. I My first year or two, I really was kind of you think about like the Deadspin days or the
Yep.
Gawker day, like I was very bloggery. Like I would just blog up any sort of piece of news and kind of put my spin on it or not, or just it would just be a piece of news or whatever.
Yeah,
So
would this go through the CBS site or like X?
yeah, CBS site.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it was very loose. It was not super editorially tight, I would say. Which it felt, I mean, looking back now, it felt like it was like the Wild West. It didn't really feel like that at the time. It felt normal. Um, and then what happened over time was that transit, like I would say 95% of the job at the beginning was just writing, getting stuff on the website. And then obviously you see the transition over time to like, oh, now you're a part-time podcaster. Now you do video. And you're like, I don't think I signed up for this. I guess I'll
You're a
do it.
content creator.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm good at it, but I guess here we are. And so by the end, it was probably 60 to 70% writing, which I still loved the most. But you're doing all these other things. But I think in terms of like, how did I make a name for myself? I feel very lucky to have been in kind of this crowd that was, I would say, the golf Twitter, like the beginning of golf Twitter, which was like the No Lane Up guys and the Fried Egg guys and Brendan Porath and Sean Bar, just all these guys that have become friends. And we would all just get on Twitter, honestly, and like try to make each other laugh. Like that was more than half of what we were trying to do. I guess we were trying to gain a following, sort of, but really the joy in it was like trying to make each other laugh with just stupid things we were saying. And I think from that, it felt like, I think to other people, it felt like they were looking at a little bit like a group chat or somebody's text messages or something like that. And for whatever reason, that just kind of stuck and people glommed onto it. And, I think a lot of those guys and women that were in that crew early on have gone on to have a lot of success in their careers.
Well, and when you started, blogs were super popular. Now you have
Yeah.
all these different type of social media outlets. How though is that working with blogs and like Chat GPT? Like people could create a blog in 30 seconds. Is that something that's frowned upon?
I think it's definitely frowned upon. I've never done it. I feel scared to do it. Not because I'm scared of artificial intelligence, but just because I'm like, I don't like, yeah, I don't know how frowned upon
Right?
it is. I do think here's what I think about that, Evan, is like I could see over time my job at CBS Sports or any job, like whether you're at ESPN or Golf Week or whatever, so much of that game is the SEO game where you're like, okay, I'm going to write about the tee times for the Masters. Guess how many people are Googling tee times for the Masters? A lot more than are reading like whatever crazy harebrained blog post you've dreamed up. Like
Yeah.
that's just it's such the game in the online world. And what's going to happen, what has already started to happen is like artificial intelligence will replace all of that. Like it takes almost no skill to write the tee times to write up like a master's tee sheet, right? Like
Yeah.
a machine can do that. And a machine's going to be more efficient, make less mistakes, and be faster and not get tired from doing so. And so AI is going to replace all this like sort of rote, non there's not a lot of personality or humanity within writing about tea times and what time is the U.S. Open come on TV, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I think you're going to see a pivot to hopefully what can we do that machines can't do, which is have heart, have personality, have humanity, all these things that are very unique to human beings. And I think you're going to see people that you're already seeing this. The people that are successful are the people that write from a point of view and they use their life experience to create an experience for other people. We see this in like the NBA. Like people don't watch NBA regular season games, but they
Mhm.
definitely listen to the Zach Lowe podcast and or the Bill Simmons podcast or whatever because those guys have a very human, personal point of view of the NBA. And I think that's the kind of stuff that I think is going to be way more valuable in the future, even than and it's already been valuable, but I think it's only going to become increasingly valuable into the future.
Agree. And based on looking just at your blogs, you could tell a human's writing it. I feel
Hmm.
like there are times if you read something, you're like, okay, this sounds way too information based, not
Yeah.
personalized. So yours, it's easy to tell that you are writing yours.
Well, I think one I was thinking about this the other day. Y- Machines will get better than me at just the syntax of writing. Like just like, oh, that's like just grammatically or whatever, a better paragraph than what I could write.
Yeah.
But I don't think what we desire as humans is necessarily quality, although quality is like you have to have a baseline of quality, but I think what we desire is humanity. Like we want human to human interaction, even if it's through a digital text or a written word or whatever. There's a transference there of humanity that I don't think any quality or goodness that a machine can create will ever be able to replace, if that makes sense. So I don't know. That's kind of where I land with all that stuff right now.
It'll be quite interesting to see how this all evolves. But
Yeah.
Kyle, so going back to early Twitter days, you, the no laying up guys, Friday, you're kind of just goofing around. It's kind of like not maybe, super serious. When did it become, all right, I'm breaking stories. This is news. People are consuming information based off what I put on Twitter.
Yeah, it's a good question. I've never got into the news breaking necessarily like in terms of, oh, so and so's out for the Masters or this person's injured or whatever. I had like one or two things over time, but I do remember after the 2016 US Open, Dustin Johnson, he has that crazy like nobody knew his score because he got a penalty. There was a
Yes.
lot of confusion on the broadcast. And I was at the event. I was at Oakmont for that event. And I remember the story I wrote afterwards was like this, hey, here's what it was like on the ground. Like here's what people were saying, here's what it felt like, here's what it smelled like. And that story went like that was probably the most read story I had ever written to that point. And that was when it was like, oh, this is not just making jokes with your buddies, although it is still that. I think Inside the NBA is the most brilliant show in professional sports because it's 90% jokes and 10% like serious, and the serious really affects you because the other 90% is jokes. And so I think we've all tried to, or I've tried to lean in that direction. And so, yeah, when there's like a huge US Open event going on and it's crazy, you're like, yeah, hey, here's what happened. Here's my reporting. Here's like how I viewed it. And I think that resonates more when people are kind of they have affection for you because of the joking you've done for the other 90% of the time. So that to answer your question, that was probably the first time where I really felt that in kind of a major way.
So
Interesting.
things have evolved a lot since 2016, right? Especially in our world of golf. But before we jump into that, when say I'm gonna give you an example over here. So I'm curious as to what your life and what your weekends look like on the weekend of a major championship.
Mm.
Let's just say Masters Saturday and Sunday, and which is coming up. It's gonna be here before we know it. What are you getting the same broadcast we're getting? Do you have different insight coming in your way? Are you just tweeting from home? What does that look like for us who are not golf journalists?
Well, it does change it shifts based on the tournament. So like I'll give you two examples. One, Masters, I'll be there and I've been there for the last 8 years or so. And you don't get so just an insight into the Masters, you don't get a different feed, but you do have at the Masters has this amazing media center that probably everybody has seen pictures of or video or whatever.
Yeah.
And you don't get a different feed, but you have on your desk this screen and it's got all the feeds just at the touch of a button. So you can say, okay, I want to watch 16 right now, and you can click 16. I mean, it's the feeds that are online, but it's just all like right there in front of you. Oh, I want to click over to ESPN. Okay, you just hit this button. I want to go to Golf Channel. You just hit this button. So that's very cool. And they do a good job. All the majors, not specifically the Masters, but they do a good job of giving you along with those video feeds, statistics and everything, you can just like it's all on the same screen, which is amazing. So I will get for the weekend of the Masters, I'll get to the course on Saturday at like late morning, mid morning, and really majors are weird during the weekends because there's not a ton to do until like 3 p.m. Right,
Mhm.
and so you're kind of just like hanging out. I like to chop it up with just friends about like, oh, what's going to happen? What do you think? Who do you think? Just you kind of get yourself into the mood of the day. And that's so fun. Like there's so much anticipation and those are just the meaning of those days and the weight they carry is so much greater than like Thursday at Bay Hill, which we just
Yeah,
experienced, right? And
correct.
so um those are awesome days. And then the last part of the day, you're following around the groups. And one of the hard parts about being at a major is you don't necessarily know who to follow. If there's six guys that are within one of the lead, you're like, I don't know. Like, should I go with Brooks? Should I go with Spieth? Should I get like which direction should I go? So it can get a little chaotic, especially at Augusta where you don't have your phone out there. I remember the year that Spieth looked like he was going to shoot 62 in the final round in 2018. I mean, we were running around all over the course trying to figure out what was going on. It was wild. So that's like a major that I'm at. The Players, which is coming up this week, is a little bit different in that I'm not traveling to it this year. I'll be home and I'll just watch from home like everybody else. I don't have any special feed or anything like that. The one major that I do have gotten kind of a different feed for is the Open. They have a world feed that doesn't have commercials. It's incredible. I would pay any amount of money that they wanted me to pay. I get it for free as a media member, but I would pay for it if they want me to. Hope they're not listening. But yeah, I just watch from home. I'm taking notes. I use Twitter now a little bit as a repository for my thoughts of like, oh, I want to, it's almost like my notebook or my journal of like, oh, I want to remember this and write about it later. And then when I go to write the newsletter, I'll just go back through Twitter and be like, okay, yeah, that seemed relevant. I want to expand on that. That's stupid. That's dumb. Oh, I should include this video. So that's sort of my companion in terms of how I use, um, my digital notebook to kind of write what I'm about to write.
And does the mindset shift knowing that your digital notebook is being consumed by tens of thousands of people?
Well, you don't, the only thing that's different is I wouldn't write like in shorthand or, um, there are times where you're trying to make something go viral. Like, oh, I had this great thought. I think this will go viral. And so you spend more time on it. But a lot of times I'm just like jotting down what I would write in my notebook and knowing like in the back of your mind, like, oh, a ton of people might see this if it gets retweeted or whatever. So that, but I don't really, I think I care less now about building up that, like what that number gets to in terms of my following and more about using that space to like let people in a little bit, but also as here's the thing, like Twitter allows me to, if I wrote in my notebook, I'd write down 100 things. Twitter forces you to say like, okay, does this really matter? And so it gives you a space to say like, okay, here are the like 15 things that I actually probably want to write about. So it really is almost like a filter for my thoughts so that I'm not writing down every single thing that I think. And then I'll come back to them later. And most of the things that I've tweeted about, I'm probably going to eventually write about.
Now, Kyle, now that you're not with CBS Sports, was there any uncertainty into if you were going to be able to get media access to these events?
Yeah, for sure. And there still is. I mean, I'm thankful that I get to go to the Masters. That was certainly not uh presumed. And I haven't gotten all the way through the year in terms of like US Open, PGA Championship, Ryder Cup. I'm hopeful that I still get to cover those events. I think I've, over time proven that I am serious about the work that I'm doing,
Hmm.
but I never want to presume anything. I think you start to presume things and it just leads to a lot of uh, I don't know, pride and arrogance and entitlement. And that's just the opposite of what I want to be. So yeah, certainly. I think the flip side of that is like, okay, let's say you don't get access to anything. Can I still do my job? Yeah, probably. It's probably not going to be as good, but if I had to stay home all year and only watch on TV, like I could still probably do it. So there was concern, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, this absolutely has to take place.
Well, I'm happy. So that's a great question from Evan. So we started this podcast by discussing your entrepreneurial venture that is new to you in your life. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that. Normal Sport, which is an excellent name. Tell us about the inception of Normal Sport.
Well, the inception of it probably goes back to, I want to say like the 2020 US Open, which was at Winged Foot. That was the COVID year. They played it in September that year,
Hmm.
which was really weird. I actually didn't go to it. I don't know if I know anybody that went to it. There was nobody there. And I remember, I think it was Phil Mickelson was in a bunker at Winged Foot and he's like choked up to almost to the like the middle of the shaft and he's got the ball above his waist and he's like it looks like he's hitting a baseball and you're like what this is this game is so stupid like I think I came at it from a not like I didn't like I said earlier I didn't necessarily grow up in the golf world. I grew up kind of around it but not in it.
Yeah.
And so stuff gets normalized for people who grow up in it in a way that it didn't for me. And so I just started calling things like that out. Like, guys, this is dumb. Like this is insane. And it kind of became a thing. I turned it in, my illustrator, Jason Page, and I turned it into a book in 2021 after the Ryder Cup, which was a ton of fun. We just kind of wrote about what happened in golf that year. And then we did it again in 2022 and 23. And then those eventually turned into the newsletter, basically. And yeah, that's kind of the hook, right? Is like golf is absurd, but we definitely talk about a lot of other things other than that. But that's definitely the entry point into the normal sport world is like guys taking their clothes off to get in ponds to hit golf balls. You're like, this doesn't happen in the NFC Championship or in the NBA Finals. It's a very strange sport, and you see it every week. You see different, crazy things like that happen every week. So that's the portal into the normal sport world for sure.
Amazing.
Aside from the blogs, you guys have a vision like similar to Forward Play Golf, where you maybe have merchandise, podcast, anything else you guys have planned? What's kind of
Yeah,
the vision?
we're trying to take it slow in terms of like establishing our operational consistency.
Hmm.
It's very easy, at least for me, to get out over my skis and say, let's do these 100 things and it'll be awesome. And then you're burned out in 2 months, right?
Yep.
So we're trying to get the newsletter, just get it down, get it in a rhythm, get through 6 months of it and say, like, are we enjoying this? Is this the right path? We are working on merchandise right now. That's a whole other, it's really hard. I think it doesn't seem that hard. And maybe I'm just new to it. But it's very difficult to really get it again to nail the cycle of like, okay, operationally, this is how we order and this is where we store things and this is how we ship them. This is what we charge. Like that takes a lot of effort. And so yeah, we're trying to work on that right now. But then we're not really doing anything else creatively in terms of podcast or video. I've got some ideas for the future, but yeah, we're just trying to grow slowly.
Yep.
And I think over time, hopefully we'll just fall in love with some different ideas and pursue them wholeheartedly like we have with the newsletter.
And you say we. Who is we?
Yeah, so it's me. Jason Page is the illustrator, and he's also a co-founder of the business. My buddy David Hill, he does sales, and he's a co-founder. So he sells our newsletter. He sells space in our newsletter to brands, to Garmin and to Meridian Putters and Holderness and Bourne and different places like that. And then Jeff Smith does our tech. So the four of us are kind of the co-founders of the business. He makes sure the newsletter gets to all 15,000 people that it's supposed to go to, and that it gets on the website the way that it's supposed to show up there. So he's in charge of all the stuff that I don't really understand.
Very cool. No, we're gonna definitely stay updated with everything you guys are developing. It's a great name and it appears to be a great product too. So we'll be tapped in. Kyle, let's talk about the Live Golf PGA Tour merger. Any new developments on that front?
No, every update is a non-update. Last week at Bay Hill, Jay Monahan did an update that was like, we're still trying, and it's like, God. I mean, I saw that Trump addressed this probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and said that he thinks that the Russia-Ukraine war is more complicated than the PGA Tour Live outcome. Which at this point, I kind of believe. It's frustrating. I get it, right? I think that you don't want to look, the longer this goes on, I think the more leverage the PGA Tour probably has, right? Because then you get into this space where Live or the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia has to say, do we really want to give this YouTuber named Bryson another $250 million, when they're losing, I mean, they're just losing so much money. And I know that it's nothing. I totally understand that it's nothing to them. But the tour does, I think, gain leverage over time. But I think what the tour is underestimating, and maybe everybody's underestimating, is that time comes at a cost. And the cost is people's attention. The longer this goes on and the longer it plays out, the less people are going to care about your product. And maybe you get that back. I think that, we've seen other sports recover from similar things. Baseball is kind of the example, the strike in 1994, and baseball is obviously fully recovered from that. But I don't know. I think you don't want to underestimate the power of people's attention and how meaningful it is to have it and how easy it is to kind of lose it over time.
The only benefit they have is they got all our attention on the major weekends.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
the other tournaments aren't as important. When the majors come and you get to watch Brooks Koepka, Bryson, it's much more exciting.
I agree. I think it would be better if you had this sort of hierarchy leading into that. And instead, right now, it feels like this sort of flat landscape, and then you jump way up and it's the majors. And so I think having a sort of a pyramid is better, which I think everybody probably would agree with. But it is true the majors have benefited relatively. I don't know if they've benefited from a pure like numbers standpoint because I do think people are just like, whatever, golf, I'm over it. But I think relative to the PGA Tour and Live and European Tour, certainly the major championships have been the beneficiary.
Well, and those outside of the top 50 in the world rankings are really getting screwed. Especially they're not getting the PIP money. What's the money from the PGA Tour, the top 10? PIP, PIP.
Yep. Yep.
And they're not getting involved in that. These signature events have 70 players. So you got to go out and perform at the Cognizant Classic, at the Mexico Open. There's less and less opportunity every single month.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I'm interested to see, you know, what has happened on the PGA Tour is that they've really created two levels to their tour, right? There's the people have joked there's the PGA and the PGB tour, right? And so what we just saw at Bay Hill is PGA, Players is PGA, Cognizant, Mexico, those are PGB. And so do you go ahead and formalize that where you say, hey, we're going to have 125 guys in every tournament? I think I agree they should have more than 70. I think 70 is just it just doesn't feel like a big time event. You know, I think you don't have to have 160, but I think you need more than 70. You need the cut. There's just
Totally.
some like meaning that's been stripped out of it a little bit. But I think what you can do is like if you again that hierarchy, you say Corn Ferry, European, or however you want to make those, and then your PGB, and then your PGA, and then your players, and then your major championships. That's off the top of my head, but that's sort of the idea is like make make the path up to those majors have like real meaning instead of like, okay, what does this one mean again? And do you get points, the same points you get for this one? Or like it's very muddled right now. The way that I talk about the PGA Tour is it's almost like a piece of software that people just kept adding code to without asking why, and it needs to be completely obliterated and recoded. It's a messy, dirty piece of code from 30, 40 years ago that, in my opinion, needs to be blown up and kind of reconstructed.
Well, and then a whole separate element to this whole thing is that the sponsors of these events are less incentivized. Like the Cognizants and the Sonys are in a much, when they see MasterCard, they see all these getting these big signature events with TV time and the whole thing. And it's like, all right, like you do what Honda did. They said, we're done, we're out.
Yeah. Well, and I think the interesting part there is I think there's some inevitability there with we were talking about how fractured people's attention is. They're watching Netflix, they're watching YouTube. I know my attention is more fractured in on everything than it was when I started 12, 13 years ago. Not just with golf, but just I consume a lot of stuff from various places, whereas 10, 15 years ago, it was more from maybe five or six places, right? And so what happens when that is the case, and it's been accelerated by what you're talking about, it's been exacerbated by the fact that Honda didn't sign up for what they eventually got, and so that has exacerbated it. But I think the end result of that is the reality that the players are going to have to earn probably less money than they used to, and the players don't want to abide by that. And I get it, like I wouldn't either, but if you want to have a sustainable business into the future, like you don't just get like if you're running if us three are running a company and we make less revenue than we used to, we don't just get to say like, we're gonna make more, like we personally are going to make more money than we used to. Well, yeah, you can do that, but you're going to go out of business eventually, right? And so I think sometimes the players look at what's happening and they're like, well, that's you guys figure this out. Keep paying us the same or more. And it's like, well, you can only do that for so long, you know? And so I think that is one thing that has to be reconciled as this deal hopefully eventually comes together.
Well, Kyle, let's get into it a little bit. It is officially Players Weekend. And Merrick and I were talking before this call, and we wanted to know, who do you believe is going to win soon?
Who do I believe is
Whether
going?
it's this week or
Yeah.
moving forward,
Yep.
who's knocking on the door?
Well, I think the guy that I've uh and I can't remember when he last won even. But the guy that's in my head that I really kind of tabbed coming into this year was Colin Morikawa. He's obviously played well at the Players in the past. Should set up great for him. He had a really good 2024, and didn't, gosh, I don't remember the last time he won. I'll look it up while we're talking, but um, he didn't win very often. Let's see here. So Colin Morikawa, 2024, he did not win at all. He finished second at the Tour Championship, second at the Memorial, fourth at Colonial. And then in 2025, he finished second at Kapalua. His numbers have just been so good. And when your numbers are really good and you're not winning, we saw this with Scotty Scheffler, honestly, before his crazy
Yes.
run, where his
Yes.
numbers were insane. And you're like, how is this guy not winning? And then he won, then he won like 15 times in 2 years, which was crazy. And so that's not exactly where I would put Colin Morikawa, but I just think he's playing at a level beyond even he was playing at, or at least comparable to when he won his two major championships. And that's good. I think that's going to result in some victories over the course of 2025.
And is Scheffler going to three-peat this weekend?
Nah, I would say no. It's so difficult, man. You know, the TPC Sawgrass is just, the thing he has going for him. Joseph Lamagna, my buddy over at the Fried Egg, has called this out. Like, you have to be a very disciplined and patient course manager at TPC Sawgrass because there's water everywhere. There's penalty opportunities everywhere. And so Scotty's probably he's the best course manager in the world. I think he's the best course manager since Tiger. He just refuses to play toward trouble. And even when it's not really, really a threat, he'll just play away from it. And it is so beneficial to him, like that strategy, especially when he's a great ball striker. So I think he's got a better chance than most do to three-peat at a place like this, but the odds are just so stacked against you in terms of winning multiple Players Championships.
And Kyle, another man that has been underappreciated, disrespected, whatever you want to use. He's not won in almost 3 years. Patrick Cantlay. He played
Yeah.
well at the Genesis in San Diego. And you know what? I like Cantlay a lot. I see him maybe coming through this week.
Yeah, I want to say he's played very well at the Players in the past. I can't remember. Was he in it? Maybe the COVID year. He had a great round early. Let's see here. I'll pull him up. He's played 4 events so far this year, and he's got 3 top 15s, which is
He's right there.
pretty salty. But Players Championship, no, he's had a bad record there. T19 2 years ago, T68, miscut. TPC Sawgrass is a weird place for him to struggle. That seems like a place that he should thrive. It seems like he should have a better record there than he does. But I'm with you. He's a little in that Morikawa camp
Yes.
of man, the numbers are amazing, and there just hasn't been the wins. So either you're not a winner, which I don't believe about either of those guys. They've won enough in the past that would tell me like, oh, they're totally capable of doing it, or you're about to break through. And so I would throw him, not at least for me, not quite in there with Morikawa, but right behind him in terms of I would expect them to win at least once, if not multiple times this year.
And Kyle, the Players kind of cements like the start of like the actual season, right? We got the majors coming up, Masters in April. Do you ever notice that these players get like more tense, more focused when you're on the course, and maybe they're not as vocal as they used to be to the media when this like grind of the season starts?
Yeah, you for sure have that at the majors, and the players also, I would say, and specifically on the weekends. You get Thursday, Friday, they'll still be jovial and talkative. Then you get Saturday, Sunday, and they won't be. And I think there's definitely, and this is what's great. This is why it's important to have a hierarchy because it's like this matters more than this, and that matters more than that, and for the players or for the golfers, the players championship is way up there. Like I know it gets a bad rap because people are like, oh, the PGA Tour is trying to turn it into a major or whatever. Like the players championship's really meaningful. I don't think it's quite as meaningful as it was because you don't have Bryson and Brooks and Rahm and Cam Smith and whoever.
Yep.
But it's still way up there in terms of tournaments you want to win. And yeah, on the weekends, there's definitely a sense of yeah, we'll get to you later. Like we'll talk about that later on. There's not a lot of chatting going on during those rounds.
And so Kyle, three guys. So we follow golf closer than any other professional sport, right? This past week we were watching the Cognizant. I almost said the Honda. We had our guy. I'm gonna give you three names. You're gonna tell me which of these guys is going to win first. Patrick Rogers, Daniel Berger, Russell Henley.
That's a good trio to choose from, or it's a difficult trio to choose
Yeah.
from. God, Rogers just doesn't win, which is
know.
tough. Henley doesn't win a lot either. Berger wins, but he's been hurt. Um, I'll say Henley. I think I love Russell Henley. I think he's not as physically gifted as those other two guys, but man, he just is so consistent and he's a great iron player. Yeah, I'll say Henley. He's kind of in the mix at PGA National a little
Very
bit.
much. He led
Didn't
on Sunday.
Yeah, didn't have a chance, I guess, on the last. He fell too
Nays.
far back of Highsmith, but yeah, I think Russ Henley will be on the U.S. Ryder Cup team this year, but I think he'll have to get a win or two to kind of get there.
And similar to Xander last year, who's going to be the next non-major guy to win a major?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I'm gonna have to pull up who hasn't. Let's see here. We've got Scotty, Rory, Xander, Rahm, Morikawa, JT. They've all won majors.
Yep.
Yes.
Hatton,
Has not.
eh, I don't know. He's just not been great at majors.
I would
Cantlay.
say he's won. The last couple of years, I've always been banking on Cam Smith.
He won though.
I
Well,
know.
he won
Yep,
the
Yeah.
yep.
Yeah.
yeah, he won the Open. There's Fleetwood, Cantlay, Ludwig, Neiman, Burns, Mav McNeely's interesting. Gosh, I guess I'll say Ludwig is an easy answer, right? Like he's kind of the
Mhm.
sexy answer. I'll say Cantlay though.
Agreed. Him or Fleetwood. I like to ride with the experience in the majors.
Yeah, I think Cantlay is just his major record's so weird because you look at him and
Mm.
you're like, oh, he should be as good as he is. He should be even better in the majors, and he kind of hasn't been. And I don't totally know what to make of that. Yeah, I'll say Patrick Cantlay.
How about Keegan Bradley? Can he get another one under his sleeve?
Another major?
Yes.
No, I don't think so.
I don't either. He's the second stage, right? All eyes on Bethpage Black.
Yeah, uh he's having a unique year. And the reason for that is because he's a young or a youngish Ryder Cup captain that is not really in the mix to be on the team, but enough so that it's it's feasible. Like, what if he finishes third at the Masters? And I don't even know if he's in the Masters. I'm sure he is. Third at the Masters and fifth at the U.S. Open. Okay, like what do we do then? Do you have to put him on the team? Like, I just think there's a lot of scenarios that are not inconceivable that could have him in the mix to be on the team. But I think the thing that people don't realize about the Ryder Cup is it's so grueling as the captain. It's not just like you roll in 2 weeks before and you're like, oh, let's get the boys together and see what we got.
Yeah.
Like you're doing stuff all year, and that is
Yeah.
so draining. And he's in TGL also, and there's just he has a lot going on that makes it difficult to put in the time, effort, and energy needed to contend at big events.
And before we talk about TGL, quick question that Merrick and I have talked about for months. Would you rather have a gold medal for your country or a major win? Or let's say a Masters, because that's probably the best major you could win.
Did I get the gold medal in golf?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
what I mean. You either
Okay.
win the gold medal in golf or you get a
Well, I
green
didn't know if I
jacket.
was
Yeah, yeah.
like a NBA player or like a jacked swimmer or something. Masters for sure.
Interesting.
I
I think
think,
I
Merrick had
feel
the same
similar.
answer. Mine
Yeah.
was the gold because it's only one of every 4 years.
yeah, I think I was talking to Trevor Immelman about this one time, and he thinks that the Olympics will become like really highly regarded in golf. I mean, it's already like this was several years ago. It's already like I think made some leaps in terms of how highly regarded it is. But he was kind of saying like it'll be like internationally meaningful. And I see that trajectory more now than I did when he first said it to me. But I don't think it's there quite yet. I think I would take every major except for the PGA over a gold medal.
I think I would take any major. I think there's something about he's a major champion. It's that, especially in the world of golf, that means so much.
Yeah, but there's only like how many gold medalists walking around? He's a gold
If
medalist.
you're
That's
a
pretty
gold
crazy.
medalist, you're only in your career, you're only going to play at two or three of them because it's only 12 years. And if you're not the best 8 years later, you ain't going to get a chance.
I think yeah, you'll be unless you're especially if you're American, if you're from Ireland or the Netherlands,
Yeah.
like yeah, maybe two or three, but if you're an American, you probably only get
Yeah.
one.
Like Scotty will probably
Maybe
play in 2028, but come 2032, he might be not as good.
yeah. Or I mean, you don't have to be like that much worse. I mean,
Yeah, it's just four USA guys go.
you could be the 12th best player in the world and not sniff the US being on the US team, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Kyle, where do you see Tiger Woods this year? What's he up to? What's he doing?
Uh I don't know. I mean, I think he's going to try to play the majors.
Hmm.
It was interesting even last week to hear him talk after TGL ended, after his season ended at TGL, and he's like, "Yeah, I just don't. My heart is not in practicing right now." And like, wow, I don't think I've ever heard Tiger say it. Now, obviously, like his mom died. He's had a lot of different things going on, but he even mentioned the P like he's facilitating the PGA Tour and Public Investment Fund deal, and he cited that as a reason that his heart's not in practicing. So I don't think that I think he will never say this, but I think he sees himself, or I think he should see himself more as not a ceremonial golfer, but as an uncompetitive major player. Like, and for sure, like I think he should absolutely still show up to the majors. I think that is it's important to have him there,
Hmm.
but I don't think he's coming in legitimately thinking like he's gonna play, or that he's put in the time and
To win.
practice needed to be competitive to contend. And I don't think anybody else really thinks that either.
Do you think the USGA will make a special exemption for him to compete in all US Opens going forward?
I think they'll for sure they'll do it a couple times. I think the big question will be how many times do they do it? They've done it in the past. I can't remember. I think Tom Watson got some, maybe Jack Nicklaus. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he will get them. He turns 50 this year. So could you see him get up to five exemptions, like until he's 55? I don't think that's unreasonable. I mean, he's been, a Tiger, it's not just the US Opens. It's the US AMs, it's the US Junior AMs. Like he's been so meaningful to the USGA organization that they could give him 15 and I don't think anybody would care. But I think for the sake of the events, I think five is not unreasonable number that he would get over time.
We'll see. It's going to be a fun year regardless, you know. We got some amazing events upcoming. But speaking of things that I personally don't find as amazing, what are your thoughts on this TGL League?
Well, full disclosure, I am freelancing for
Yes.
TGL, so I'm involved with it. Um, Look, I think year one was better than I thought it would be in some ways, and there was obviously some things to work out. But you know, Shane Lowry and Tom Kemps both said this last week. They both said in different ways. This is essentially what they were saying. We were surprised at how much we cared about winning, and I think that matters. You go back to why do people even watch this stuff? Well, if you don't care about it as the player, then I'm certainly not going to care about it because I care about watching other humans interact and be great at things and care about things. And so I think it's really meaningful to TGL that guys are saying like I care a lot more than I thought I would. And I was surprised how much Tiger seemed to care. Like he was way into it in a way that
Hmm.
I didn't necessarily anticipate. And so I think that's like the most important thing for TGL. But I don't know. We'll see where it goes over time. It's going to be, I think what will be interesting is where is it 5 years from now or 10 years from now? Like is it still like thrive? Is it thriving? Has it grown? Has it retract? Like I don't know. I just don't know directionally which way it's headed. But I think season one, all things considered, has to be considered pretty successful for them. I don't
Hmm.
know if they would say that in terms of ratings or attention or any of that, but just the fact that guys seem bought in and care about it a lot, I think is incredibly important.
Does the second season start early 2026?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Very cool. Looking forward to seeing how it evolves. But now get the big boys on the big boy golf courses, which will be fun to watch. And speaking of big boy golf courses, I would be remiss if we didn't wrap this up with 2025 Bethpage Black,
Mm,
Ryder Cup. Okay, here's what we're gonna do, Kyle. We're gonna close this out. We're gonna play a little game called On or Off. I'm
okay.
gonna provide you some names for this Ryder Cup American side. With that said, we're gonna presume that Scotty, Xander, Bryson, and Morikawa are the four on the team. With that
Scotty
said, there's
Xander, okay, yeah.
Bryson.
Wait,
There's,
Scotty Xander, Bryson, Morikawa. You can put Cantlay on there.
okay,
Yeah.
so that's five. That means seven spots remain. So I'm gonna list
Okay.
you some names here from the American side. You're gonna say on or off.
Is this based on like if it was starting tomorrow or like what
This
I
has been
think
no,
what?
what you think will happen come September.
Okay. I've already
Jordan
committed to Russell Henley.
Jordan Spieth,
Oh gosh. Ooh, I'll say off.
Sahith Theegala,
On.
Akshay Bhatia,
Off.
Sam Burns,
On. You're gonna have to keep count of this,
I
Evan,
think we
because I'm gonna
have,
I'm gonna put
if
like
we
18
include
guys on there.
Henley, I believe we have Henley made
8?
it what, six? It gives us four spots left, right? Henley, Burns, and
Sahith and Burns, yeah.
yep, okay, four spots left.
Tony Finau.
On.
Oh, this is gonna get interesting
Three
now,
Yeah,
spots.
Kyle.
I know, I know, I know.
Justin Thomas,
Yeah, he's on for sure.
Two
Ricky
spots.
Fowler,
No, he's off.
Will Zalatoris,
I'll say off,
Yeah,
but it's more of a like out of sight, out of mind type thing. He just hasn't, I don't.
yes,
hasn't done much. Yeah,
Yeah,
Maverick McNeely,
I'm gonna say off.
Brooks Koepka.
Oh man, how many? I have 2 spots
two
left.
spots. Yep.
I'm gonna say off,
Okay.
Max Homa
off,
and Wyndham Clark,
on. So I
Yep.
have
So there's
one
one.
spot to play
There's
with.
Dustin
Okay.
Johnson.
Patrick Reed.
Oh,
You probably got to
I
go
don't.
back and give it to Brooks.
Brooks is weird because he. I don't know, man. Like he's such a weird teammate. He like doesn't care, but then he kind of does. And then I think Brooks's major season is going to be really, really. I think Brooks and Rom, their major seasons are going to be so interesting.
Hmm.
I think Rahm's going to be awesome at the majors. People are very down on him, but he's historically great. Like he's
Yeah,
one of the
he
greats
shows up.
of this generation, especially at majors. And obviously Brooks has too, but then you're like, is Brooks done winning majors? Like that's not inconceivable. So I don't know. Let's give it to Mav. Let's give it to Mav
Yeah,
Okay.
McNeely.
He needs to
Yeah.
win.
Yeah, he does. But I think, look, like one thing that's underrated for us as fans is guys at that level, they really value consistency. And if you are consistently contending at big boy events, then people's present or people's like what they think about you, you're very highly valued. And so yes, he probably does need to win, but I do think there's a path for him to get on the team if he's like contending at majors and contending at big events. Now, he hasn't done any of that yet. He's had a really good first part of the year, but there is still definitely work for him to do to get on that team.
And come this Sunday, who's our players champion?
I'm going to say Colin Morikawa. Not somebody that I don't know what he is in terms. He's probably not in the top three of the betting favorites, but he's the guy that I just have been waiting to break out, and I'll say he gets it done at TPC Sawgrass.
Amazing.
Awesome.
And Kyle, where can everyone find you, your work, and Normal Sport?
Yeah, normalsport.com. You can sign up. Newsletter's free, and we have a ton of fun with it. It only goes out 2 or 3 times a week. You can follow me on Twitter at Kyle Porter NS for Normal Sport. But yeah, I would encourage people to sign up at normalsport.com and follow the golf year through our newsletter.
Right
Well,
on.
Kyle, it's great to meet you, brother. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great. Anytime. I appreciate you guys having me.
Our
Absolutely.
pleasure.
Thanks,
a lot,
guys.
guys.